Hello and welcome to the Matt Ligor Show. I'm your host, Matt Ligor. And on the Matt Ligor Show, we like to talk to entrepreneurs, business people, people who are up to inspirational things. Sometimes they all kind of go together. Sometimes we break them down into individual subjects. However the mood strikes us is the way we go. Now today we're going to have a interesting person on our show. Have you ever suffered with anxiety? I know that I never do, so I'm one of those lucky people that's never had to experience it. But I know most people do. And I'm kidding. Of course I suffer from anxiety. Everybody does. Before that camera goes on, I suffer a little anxiety. But I've really been working at that to be excited about this and about being in the public eye or talking publicly, which can be a very high anxiety moment. I thought it was that when you spoke publicly, that was the greatest fear people had. But one of my guests told me, Linda Ugelo told me, that actually the biggest thing people are afraid of is snakes. I didn't know. Who knew? So today I have my guest, Maureen. Say your last name for me, please.
Magauran.
Magauran. All right. It's a bad habit I have of forcing the last name and saying it wrong and then having to be corrected. So I wanted to have it correct the first time. So Maureen, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great, yeah. Well, thank you. I want to thank you for having me here.
You're welcome.
I'm excited to do that. So I'm trained as a psychiatrist, a doctor and a psychiatrist, and I also use a holistic approach. So I use modalities of meditation, different techniques to help people feel less anxiety, less stress, without going to medications first. So there's a sense of really empowering someone to feel their best and to even go beyond that to sort of what do they want to live and actualize in their life.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so where can we get in touch with you? What's your website, phone number? Where do you practice out of?
So currently my office is located in North Andover, Massachusetts, and I'll be moving to Danvers. And my website is my name, which is maureenmagauran.com. And my number is 978-494-6494.
All right. Well, we'll put all that stuff up on the screen too, so people can see. And at the end of the show, we'll have it up there also. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get into this field?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family. I have 11 brothers and sisters. I have a really big family.
Wait a minute. So are you number 11? Are you one of 11 or is there 12?
Well, there's 12. So
Cheaper by the dozen.
Right,
You've never heard that before, have you?
Love that movie. My dad cried at that movie. It was so touching, so much like our life. But yeah, so my dad was from Ireland, actually, and he was a doctor, and he really encouraged us to study medicine. So it was something I was interested in, along with 7 of my siblings. 8 of us are doctors.
No way, really?
Yeah. And I actually had the great fortune to study in Ireland. I studied in Dublin. I went to medical school in Ireland. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And when I was in medical school, you kind of decide at that point what area you're going to focus in. And, interestingly, I was struggling a little bit with being away from my boyfriend at the time. I was having a hard time. So I did some counseling, some therapy, and I thought, wow, this is really cool stuff. I thought I can actually change how I feel by changing my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I thought this is such a powerful tool. So I started to learn more about it, and I decided I was going to go into psychiatry. So I came back to the States, and I did a 4-year residency training at Boston University Medical Center in psychiatry. And it was a real lesson for me in terms of mental health psychiatry, and I realized what I wanted to focus on was more therapy. I wanted to kind of do less of the diagnosis, less of the labeling and the medications, and kind of really work with people in therapy. So I started a private practice in Andover, Massachusetts, right out of my residency. And I really enjoyed it, but I found I was having trouble with not taking on people's emotional issues because that's where they were coming to me. I wanted to help them. And, I really learned a lot about needing to set boundaries, to take care of myself, that kind of thing. And at that point, I didn't really have as much knowledge how to do that. So I felt like I was burning out. I was like, I'm not helping anyone if I'm sinking with this ship. So I took some time off. I actually got pregnant first, so I took some time off and I stayed home with my son. And I discovered I took a course on integrative nutrition, which I found really powerful, and that helped me kind of change my mindset, again, to this holistic approach. Changing what we eat changes how we feel. And I also discovered meditation, which was huge for me. It was such a grounding, centering, relaxing. It was just such a way for me to kind of start my day and to really enter things with more ease. With young children, you're kind of frazzled, you're exhausted, you're spread out, so it's a really kind of grounding thing. And there was a process called IST, which is a meditation-based therapy, as I call it, that I became a practitioner in, and I found it so powerful that I wanted to bring it to my clients and the people I work with, because I find that when people do therapy, and when I was acting as a therapist, there was a sense of only getting to a certain level with things, that there was a sense of people were talking to me saying, okay, this is what happened to me, or this is my experience, but it's not changing. Why isn't it changing? So this process of bringing in the meditation took it to a whole nother level of depth for people. They would get out of the sort of circling thoughts that we can have of the same things over and over and over again, and also our mind trying to kind of figure things out, like, well, I have this because of that. And so when you step out of that, and also really connecting you to your body, like your body is such a powerful force for feeling grounded, feeling, connected to the earth. It's a powerful tool that I think gets overlooked a lot, and particularly nowadays with cell phones and texting and the internet. There's so much information that's accessible that we tend to kind of move out of our bodies into our heads all the time. So I found that IST process was so powerful that I decided to bring it to my
IST.
Yeah, thank you.
Stands for?
So IST is an acronym for Inner Space Techniques of Meditation.
Okay.
So it is a type of therapy, but it's based, there's a kind of a meditation aspect to it, a guided meditation where we start from there. So it's a kind of, it's a less of a sort of cerebral and more of an intuitive, body felt kind of thing.
Okay, so explain it to in a really simple way. Obviously, you go to the psychiatrist, the psychologist, you talk about your issues, what's bothering you,
Right.
and obviously it's good to talk, right? Get it out, get it
Yeah.
out, get your head, you can kind of get it out of your head, out there in the space, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Then there's obviously you can get a prescription written to you to kind of like level you out, right? So you're not so down or not so up, but kind of just levels you out, correct?
In terms of medications?
Yeah, medications.
Yeah.
All right. Now you are more focusing on a holistic approach.
Yeah.
All right. And I like what you were saying, how you said you want to change the way you think, right?
Right.
So what are some techniques that you would apply to yourself or to a patient?
Yeah. So, I think in terms of the work I do, it tends to be really individualized, but there are definitely some kind of generalizations, things that work for everybody. So, in terms of things like definitely connecting to our body is something that I find is really key for people. So it's a sense of, I feel like it gets underestimated how much you can use things like physical activity to shift how you feel, how much you can engage yourself. So there's a sense of kind of connecting to your body, sort of a sense of grounding, a sense of, being outside, being in nature. There's all these kind of tools that we have that are natural, that are accessible. Obviously, paying attention to your thoughts, what you're thinking, your patterns of thought. A lot of people will tell me they'll wake up first thing in the morning, they're already anxious. There's already a sense of, like, oh my God.
That's me. Or it has been me in the past,
Yeah.
Wake up, feel very anxious, feeling dread, anxiety, oh, what's going to go wrong today?
Yeah.
That was the way I woke up a lot like that
Yeah.
for a great part of my life, actually, feeling that way. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think it's important. I think a lot of people do, and I think they wake up at night like that, or they have trouble falling asleep because of that. And so a lot of that is kind of getting a sense of, well, what's behind that for you personally? What is that kind of stress? But there are tools you can do in terms of looking at how are you talking to yourself? What are the thoughts? What are you saying to yourself? Can you separate from some of that? Because we have these automatic ideas and beliefs about ourselves that we've been told since we were, maybe 4 years old. And so it's like, okay, well, let's challenge that. Now you're in a different space in your life. Who are you? What are you doing? And is that really you? So there's a kind of identification away from what you kind of thought of yourself, these kind of we would call them false beliefs, into who you are now and who you want to be. And you can use things like mantras. You can tell yourself, like, it's really important to be aware of the inner dialogue.
Yeah.
Because usually it's unconscious and it's just repetitive and it's the same thing, like, oh, you messed up, oh, you're such a jerk, oh, that, you know, and it's kind of like beating yourself up. So it's really important to kind of, to see that and to not do that, you know, to find a different way.
I always talk to people when I hear them say something. Well, actually, someone said it to me a long time ago. They said, stop being so self-deprecating. Stop and hiding it with being funny. Like, I would say a joke and I would be self-deprecating or something. Someone said to me, cut it out. That's enough of that, all right? Don't do that anymore. It's not good for you, and I don't like to hear it. And I was like, what do you mean you don't like to hear it? And they're like, if I heard someone else talk to you that way, I would be mad at that person. I hear you talking to yourself that way. Cut it out. I don't like it. I like you. I don't want to hear you talk like that. And it kind of struck me that, boy, if someone else was deprecating to me or rude to me, I would be offended. Totally. But if you say it to yourself, somehow it's okay. But yet you still hear it. You hear it even more because you hear it silently and audibly as you say it.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful gift that person gave you.
Yeah,
because it's a kind of real reflection, you know. Because I think everyone does it and they don't even really fully consciously know they're doing it, and also that they don't acknowledge how much it hurts, you know, how it's actually kind of painful. If you know, had someone you really cared about or a young child and you heard someone talking to them like that, you would never put up with that, you know. And so it's just, there's all these kind of tweaks and things that are kind of unconscious that we're doing, that as you see that, you can then make a choice. Do I want to beat myself up all the time? Do I want to encourage myself? What is this relationship going to be like? Yeah. You know, in essence, it's a lot of like, you know, sometimes I describe it as a reparenting as well of ourselves. It's like we want, you know, as a child, you want someone who's there, who's loving, who's kind, who's like, yeah, look at you, who's encouraging you, but who's also going to be direct, like this person who's saying, well, that's not working for you, so try something else. And it's like we can actually start to do that for ourselves. We can advocate for ourselves. We can empower ourselves in that way. But it's almost like tweaking something so that you can hear it or you see it or you're aware of it. You know, that it's not just going on and on and on in the background and kind of affecting you negatively.
Yeah. I was talking, I was on Linda's show and I was saying that how like what you put into your brain, what you put into your mind, what you watch on TV, what you read, who you talk to, all that stuff goes into your conscious mind and sinks down inside. And you think about it afterwards. I know sometimes if I watch a show or a movie that's kind of like really has like a troubling theme to it or something, it bothers me afterwards. It affects you. You know, and you're like, oh, it's just a movie. But it does affect you. You know, a scary movie scares you. You know, I remember when my kids were little, one of my oldest daughters, she would never watch a scary movie because she's afraid she's going to have bad dreams. And she would have bad dreams because she was thinking about it. So okay, now I want to ask you another question. You had mentioned something about your sister passed away. Yeah. And you had said what you anticipated on feeling around death was different than what you felt, right? Right. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So just after Christmas, my sister passed away. She's the youngest in our family. It was a shock, you know, it was a tragedy. It was very surprising and sad. She had an aneurysm, and you know, with aneurysms, you don't necessarily know you have them, and you pretty much die right away. Yeah. So while it was the whole experience was very upsetting, of course, but at the same time, I had this other experience which was really surprising for me. With all the meditation I've done, I did some meditation, and there's a book that I had read called Death, the Great Journey, which helps in understanding or dealing with death. And so at that point, after my sister died, I kept having this sense of her in having a lot of joy, which surprised me. It was almost like I would close my eyes and I would feel her, and I could still do that. And there was this sense of, she was like, you know, a sense of joy. And it was such a sort of contrast to the pain, the loss, this isn't fair, you know, all these different kind of emotions that come up around it. And it was like, wow, I can't deny that. I can't deny that sense. And it just was sort of solidifying for me a sense of like, well, you know, maybe there is something after death. Maybe the fact that every single one of us dies and will die, and everyone we love, you know, that there's a sequence, maybe there's something else. And so, you know, I spoke at her funeral, and again, it's like I felt her presence there. Everyone, you know, she was younger, she has children, so it was very sad. People were very upset. But it was like, it was hard in some ways to grieve at that point because I could feel her. It was like she was there in this big shining heart. And I still feel her. I feel her all the time. I feel like she inspires me. I feel like she's encourages me, that she's saying, you can do this, talk about this more, let people open to this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my brother-in-law passed away just a few weeks ago, and he had been diagnosed with cancer for a few years, and he was struggling, but he had what's called a near-death experience when he was 13. He'd fallen into a frozen river, and he said he just felt this sense of peace come over him and this light, and then the next thing he knew, he was kind of being pulled out. And so then when he was diagnosed with cancer, it was almost like something switched for him. He remembered it again, and he said, well, I'm not afraid of dying. His words, that he'd seen the face of God, and that he's like, I'm not rushing it, but it's going to be okay. And so it was interesting then, after my sister died, to watch this process as he was dying, and to see how he was really facing it openly, and to just feel this sort of peace within it, this sense of something moving. I think the thing with death is that we never really look at it that closely, or we don't want to, because there's so much fear and pain and things associated with it. And I know even when my father died 10 years ago, like there were parts of the experience that were actually really beautiful. It was like things were opening up, things were able to be said that had never been said in our lives, and there was just this sense of kind of this moving on. And the most powerful thing for me has been with my sister in terms of feeling her and feeling this sense, like almost the sense she's okay, it's okay. I feel like she's actually leading the way, like she's the one who's like, okay, when it's time, you'll go along. So it's really shifted that sense from having a real fear of it, not wanting to look at it, to kind of like, oh, there's the sense of something there. There's something next for all of us.
You obviously grew up Catholic, right?
Right.
All right. I grew up Christian. So many horror stories attached to death, all right? Boy, you better be good, or else you're going to hell, all right? If you're good, you'll go to heaven. And neither place really seems that good, to be honest. I mean, hell is awful, right? You get tortured the rest of life. And heaven sounds just kind of really boring. You're just going to sit up there and do what,
Right.
So you go someplace where it's safe or someplace where it's unsafe. So you don't ever face it, and you're told these stories. And like if you read the Bible, in the Bible it says, don't be afraid of death. It says, don't be afraid of it. Now, why would it say that? If it was something to be afraid of, why would it say, don't be afraid of it, don't fear it? Right. And you hear the stories of people who die and come back, and they all sound like it wasn't so bad. It was really kind of wonderful,
Yeah.
So I've always kind of thought to myself, like, obviously I have a fear of your parents dying, fear of your children dying, fear of anybody dying, fear of yourself dying. But what if it was not something to be afraid of? What if it was just like you said, just something that happens, just part of the journey, and you don't have to be so afraid of it? I think a lot of people live their life and don't ever think they're going to die.
Right.
And then it sneaks up on them, and it's like, wait, I'm not done. So I love that. I love that there's a whole nother way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and frankly, like when my sister passed away, when she died, there was that, it shakes everything, like, well, then what am I doing with this time, and what's it about, and what's important, like that sense of priorities. Like, it certainly has brought my family a lot closer together. We're saying I love you so much more. It's, it's like, why not? Why wait? And so I feel like with my work, like I feel like I have a message, I can help people, and it's like there's no good in kind of staying small with anything. It's like, well, bring it out. Why not share it? Help other people. Like, bring them to open to whatever they need to open, whether it's to life, living it more fully, start to feel less anxious, to feel more connection with the people they love. It's like, what's it really about?
So tell us, what's your passion right now then?
Well, so, I mean, my passion, part of the reason I'm here is a sense of almost stepping up. I feel like, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, because I feel like every person has a gift. Every person has something that's unique to them, that makes them shine, that makes them really special. And so it's about stepping up into that. It's about not waiting. It's about not hiding. It's about like, what's getting in the way? What am I feeling anxious and stressed about? And what if that wasn't there? Then what? What else can you create? So it's about like taking inspired action and helping people take this action to kind of really, move towards these dreams, make it a reality. Like you wanted to do this television show, you've done it, you're doing it, you're interviewing people. And it's like, then there's the next step and the next step. And And ultimately, I feel like it's about connection. It's about connecting, for me, connecting with other people, feeling that sense of love, and helping other people do the same. And so so I think it's that stepping up. It's kind of like being seen, sharing the message that I have, and allowing other people to see that they have something similar. What is it? And to kind of bring that forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. There's so much, so many. You're right. Everybody's got some gift. They've got some real talent, and they're afraid to expose it. Mm-hmm. You get afraid. You actually get afraid to succeed. Right. And it's not always afraid to fail. I think it's afraid to succeed, and what's that gonna lead to? I know sometimes I think about, like, people can be mean too, and so they'll come in and say, what are you doing that for? That's crazy. Right. Have people been that way to you at all? Has anybody been that way, kind of talked to you and said, but what are you doing? You're a psychiatrist. Why are you going this route?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, because that's kind of like the dialogue that we have in our head that's saying that to us. Oh, what are you doing? You can't do that. That's not going to work. And I found it's the opposite. When I actually do more, people are like, yeah, I want to hear more. Can you tell me more?
Okay, yeah.
So it's kind of like that sense of not giving into the fear, not even believing the fear, mm-hmm. because the fear is kind of what keeps us small, and the fear is kind of like what keeps us stuck in that same place. So, and then the more confident you get with it, if someone says it, you're like, yeah, I know it is really different than traditional psychiatry. Isn't it great? So there's a sense of like feeling good about it, feeling like you're kind of owning it, you're stepping into it, Mm-hmm. I mean, that takes time, and that, it's been years of transitioning from a traditional psychiatry practice into this, and kind of feeling like, yeah, I can do something really different outside of the medical meme, and it's okay, because it's for certain people and it helps them. So, there's a sense of standing tall in it as well.
Great, okay. Yeah. So what's your next move? What's your next step?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have this new space in Danvers, because it's bigger, so I can hold more groups as well. So I'll do the one-on-one works, I can do some groups. There's all different kind of possibilities, maybe doing some online work, maybe speaking at different events, but it's really about connecting to people. I love doing local talks, talking with women, kind of getting to know them, and to really, hold and show them that there's more, that they might be feeling kind of bogged down in parenthood and like so overwhelmed with stress, but it's like that, holding that there's so much more possibilities for them, and then it's normal. I think that's the biggest thing that people struggle with. Am I okay? Am I normal? Is there something wrong with me? And I feel like that's my biggest message, is like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're beautiful. There's this quote by Marianne Williamson that I love, and I'll probably misquote it, but she talks about what you said about how it's not our fear of failing, but it's of being brilliant, of shining, of kind of being this powerful light, and how we can actually be so much more service to the world when we actually shine our light, and that gives permission for other people to do the same. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. It's almost like, you light a candle or a flame, and then it keeps going. So it's like a real giving and a community kind of feel to it.
Wow, that's some real powerful stuff. I like it. My uncle passed away over the winter. He died. And he wasn't young, but he wasn't old. He was in his 70s, but he was kind of a vibrant guy, And so the whole family got together, and it was a really unusual chemistry happened. Everybody realized that we hadn't spent enough time with each other. And we have a pretty big family. So my cousin called me up and said, we need to do a family get-together, and we need to do them regularly. So I said, okay. So we started doing this, and now we've done like about three or four since November. No, I'm sorry, since it was right around there, whatever, right around the winter time. So the death of my uncle, which was kind of shocking and came out of nowhere, all of a sudden there was this like reuniting of the family, and like this connection came back, and I somewhere in me I thought, oh, maybe they just don't care anymore, but they did care. They felt like me. We all felt the same way. Yeah. So so many good things can come out of tragedy. Totally.
I mean, death is very awakening. It's kind of like, whoa, like whatever you're doing, it snaps you out of it, and it's like, well, what's going on? And I found after my sister died, I kept having this fear, like, oh, the Grim Reaper is around the corner. Like, who's next? Who's gonna die? And I think that's kind of that sense of like appreciating, like life, that there is only so much time that we have, and so let's get together more frequently with the people we care about. Let's tell them. Let's share that. It's very powerful.
So you had said something. So we had talked, and you talked about what would you do if you had a month to live?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? Like you kind of put it in. I don't want to steal your thunder on it. So.
Well, I was just saying for people, particularly I find with anxiety and stress, when you look at the bigger picture perspective of things, like I remember when my son was first born and I was exhausted and I wasn't sleeping at all, but I was like, my priority is to take care of him no matter what. And then with death, or if you're facing your own death, it's kind of like, well, what's important? There's so many projects and things that we're doing that actually could fall away. Mm-hmm. So there's just a sort of sense of like, if you looked at it like that, like if I had a month to live, what's the most important thing? That could really help you narrow down on, what you're doing. Like I've seen it in my sister's friends, like when she died, because she was younger, they really changed. Some of them changed the way they lived. They went from more like being in worry and complaining mode to like, okay, I'm going to go do this, and, married their partner. There were just different things that happened, but it was a sense of like, waking up a bit, like, mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is the time. What do I want? What's important, and how do I do that? How do I make that happen? How do I mm-hmm. connect, rather than just thinking it's just going to go on forever? Kind of more floating or sleeping kind of thing.
Yeah, because we do kind of go on like it's going to go on forever, and then next thing 10 years go by and you haven't done that thing you wanted to do. You haven't bought that house. You haven't changed careers or anything like that.
Yeah, so it can be really powerful to kind of look at it from that lens, and to be like, okay, well, this is actually something that's really important to me. I'm gonna focus on that now, or I'm gonna tell this person how I feel, or whatever it is that comes up.
All right. Now, I want to tell you a joke, all right? I want to tell you an Irish joke. It's
okay.
My favorite Irish joke. I think you'll appreciate this, and if you don't, you can tell me, all right? All right, it goes like this. 2 Irish guys walk out of a bar. No, really, it could happen.
Yeah. It's a good one. It never happens.
Who used to, Jack? That was Jack Lemmon's favorite joke. Do you know him? He was an actor.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I heard it and I just thought it was funny. And I say it to anybody who's Irish. I have to say it to them, whether they like it or not. So I hope you liked it.
I did, and I was just in Ireland, so definitely reinforced that point. Yeah.
All right. So just tell everybody again. How do we get in touch with you?
So you can take a look at my website, which is my name, and probably be listed somewhere. And I have...
and your name?
My name, Maureen Magauran. And I have an office in North Andover. We'll be in Danvers soon. And feel free to check out my website, see what you think, and I'd be happy to hear from you.
Okay, and how many kids do you have? You came from a family of 12. How many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids. 2 kids feels much more manageable than 12, especially nowadays. I say parenting is like having a degree. It's so complicated. There's so much pressure on it.
What are their names and ages?
So Aiden is 11 and Finn is 7 and a half.
7 and a half. Oh, the great ages. Just really great ages
really
right
awesome.
there,
Super fun.
I have 27, 13 and 9, almost 10.
Wow.
So, they're at that age. Well, 13, teenager, a little bit of trouble sometimes, a little bit moods, but she's still wonderful. And then obviously 10 years old is just great. I have girls. So it sounds like you have boys, right?
2 boys,
Two boys, yeah. So you live with all men. I live with all women.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it.
I do too, yeah. It's been great. Well, it's been excellent interviewing you. You have a great story. I really like your tactic and your new point of view and your new approach. I think that's the wave of the future. You are a trendsetter, and I want to thank you for being on the Matt Ligor Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you're welcome.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you for watching the Matt Ligor Show. We'll see you again. You can always check out my shows on YouTube, The Matt Ligor Show, and mattligor.com, which will take you to my Facebook page right now, The Matt Ligor Show, but soon I'll have a website up for that. So thanks for watching the Matt Ligor Show.